Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda and today's special guest is Tom, originally from the outside of London. He's now living in Adelaide. So thank you so much for being here, Tom. Can you start off by telling a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Tom from just outside of London. I was born there in the early 90s. We came over here in 99, my whole family. I was only a kid. Yeah, and we've been in Adelaide ever since. So, yeah, not looking at leaving anytime soon. So it's been 25 years, literally a few days ago.
Wow, well, congratulations. Anniversary in Australia. Australiaversary, we could say.
We all celebrated, shook hands, had a hug.
So,
Good.
how old were you when you left London?
5.
And have you had a chance to go back at all?
I have a couple of times, twice as a kid, and then only once, sorry, as an adult. Yeah. Sorry, I thought it was the second time. I didn't actually go. My parents went instead.
So I didn't realise you'd been in Australia that long. You still have a little bit of the British accent that I can hear, but I guess it's that kind of mix. It's almost like it's a cultivated going into an RP kind of.
Yeah, it's a hybrid thing, and people do notice it. It's funny, people notice it only after I've told them it exists, and then they start to point it out to me. For the most part, I get away with it.
Well, I guess some of the questions I pre-organised without realising you've been in Australia for quite a while, but that's okay.
That's all right.
What are some things you like about living in Adelaide? So I guess where you lived in the outskirts of London, you've been back a couple of times now. So is there anything that you missed from London, or what do you like about Adelaide?
The things I've missed from London, I'd say, look, there's certainly a pub culture that exists in the UK, or there was when I was back. I think that's dying now as a culture, but we don't have that here in Australia. The pub culture in England at the time, I'm only speaking about 10, 15 years ago here, pubs were an extension of people's living rooms, and we don't really have that here in Adelaide, certainly here in Adelaide. Pubs are taken more seriously there than they are here. I just said that the things that I like the most about Adelaide, there's upward mobility. It's something that we don't have in the UK, definitely not in London. It's the capacity to move upwards like you do here. The weather just goes without saying. I live pretty close to the beach. I'm going to guess within 500 metres of the beach. Again, not possible in the UK. Yeah, the capacity to better yourself is something else here. That's why I love it. I'm back. I always joke to my friends, you have to drag me out of here. I'm not leaving.
Well, I guess that's probably what your parents were thinking when they decided to move to Australia. I'm just completely guessing here, but from the sound of your answer is maybe for the opportunities in Australia.
Yeah, my mum hated Australia when she first arrived. My dad actually had to hide cards from her so that she wouldn't book flights back home. But after a while, it didn't take long. It took about between 6 and 12 months before they settled down a bit. But yeah, for me, distant memory, I was only 6 or 7 at the time.
Yeah. Look, to be honest, I think when you move to a different country, I think that it's always the first year that's the hardest. Like, I live in India now. I've been here 4.5 years, and the first year, mind you, the first year that I was here, COVID happened as well. So that just really was just a huge show. So pretty much like my first year was that. And yeah, it was really tough. So I can really feel it. And back then there wouldn't have been all of those same facilities and services that are available now for your parents.
No, and I remember that this was around the era of calling cards. So my parents would go and get a credit card to call. Yeah, so and you'd always miss somebody, so you'd blow $5 on this calling card you didn't get to use.
Public telephones outside.
Yeah, so if you wanted to call somebody back in the UK at the time, you'd have to have this card, and you'd push in like 30 numbers to get hold of somebody, and there's no guarantees that they were going to answer the phone anyway. But at the time, it was very isolating. It was much more isolating, I imagine, than somebody that was going to move over now. So.
Yeah, definitely. If we go back even more, my grandparents on my dad's side. So my granddad, my dad's dad, was from England, and my grandmother's from Australia, and they met in Sydney during World War II.
Yep.
After the war finished, granddad went back to England. Gran promised to marry him, so she got on a ship, because back then there were bride ships. There were ships going between England and Australia for people who met during the war. and they could only communicate by post across the ocean. So that's something Gran would always say to me, not so much now because she has dementia, but before when she was lucid, she would always say that to me, like, you have it so easy these days. You've got the internet, you can call. We had to write letters and wait months.
6 to 8 weeks to get a letter, like, yeah.
Yeah.
No. As I
Oh,
say,
yeah.
hard work.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, did you notice any cultural differences when you first moved? Like, you were quite young, so I actually don't know whether kids would note cultural differences.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Okay.
I was completely unaware of the existence of
Fair.
football.
Yep.
And I would tell kids about Arsenal. We supported Arsenal. I would tell
Yeah.
kids about the English Premier League, and they'd look at me like cross-eyed. And likewise, when they would tell me about whatever had happened on the weekend in the Crows and
Yeah.
Port, and I tried to play the game, and I just couldn't get it. I remember there was a cultural clash in that sense, and so even now I don't get AFL. I never will. It fucking baffles me.
Yeah. I used to play. I made the representative team of my area. I was quite good at it.
So I can appreciate it. I appreciate it, but it just, my dad calls it aerial ping pong, and that's really the best way I can do it as well. But
I can see that.
I have to salute the guys and girls for their athleticism, but it's just, what are the rules? There aren't any. So, yeah, that would be a cultural difference. The only other one I can think about was Australians don't have Sunday roasts like we do in the UK. The Sunday roast is a fanatical religious thing. It must be had.
Yeah.
And Australians just don't. And when they do it, they do it wrong for how we would. So as much as I look and sound Australian now, we as a family still take the roast quite seriously. There are certain key ingredients that must be in it, or it's not right.
What are the key ingredients? Tell me.
Something Australians don't do is the Yorkshire pudding, if you know what the Yorkshire pudding is.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So as you know, my granddad's from England. We actually did Sunday roast for my dad's side of the family, and Yorkshire pudding was the thing. Yeah. My mum learned how to make it, even though she's Italian.
It's the key ingredient. You have to have the Yorkshire pudding.
Yeah. My granny used to say the same. Yeah. It's definitely the, what would you call it? The Anglo-Saxon side.
So, and it's a thing of pride if you can get it right. I cannot get it right. My dad can. My sister can. So, yeah, we would have this. Whenever Australians eat at our table and they have Yorkshire pudding, they immediately exclaim what a delicious concept it is. They will never adopt it. They will never bring it on as their own.
Yeah.
That was, I suppose you could call that a culture shock. It's only minor, but it certainly is one. It's noticeable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my mum's side of the family is Italian. So my grandparents immigrated to Australia from Italy after World War II, when Australia had its big immigration push. And every Saturday we would have dinner at my nonna's house. So that was our Saturday night dinner with family, and it was always spaghetti as the entree. And then we'd have like some other pasta dishes, the main, but spaghetti always came out first. It's quite interesting. I think every kind of family or culture has their own little quirks like that.
And parts of it get adopted into Australian culture, but some of the best stuff gets left behind. So Yorkshire pudding, for whatever reason, has been shunned, been pushed back.
Yeah. I haven't had Yorkshire pudding in years, but I also haven't had a roast in years because I'm now vegetarian. But yeah, I completely forgot about Yorkshire pudding. I'll have to tell my mum about it and get her to make it next time I'm home.
Yorkshire pudding's still vegan friendly, I imagine. So.
Oh yes, yeah. Mum usually does like some kind of vegan meat for me. So when I was home last time, we had like vegan chicken schnitzel, or I still have dairy and stuff, so I'm not completely vegan, but yeah, I can still have the Yorkshire pudding and I can have some kind of plant-based roast or something.
It's just too good to refuse, I'm sorry. And if it hasn't had it, do try and seek it out. It is good.
Yes. Well, that leads us to the next question. How does Australian food compare to English? Is there an Australian food in your sense?
Yeah, there is Australian food. I'd say that Australian food is much more casual than anywhere else I've ever been.
Yeah.
And that can be negative in some ways.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's acceptable. You just have to acknowledge your standards and acknowledge the standards of wherever you may be going. So, look, if you know it's a pool party, don't be expecting much more than some overcooked snacks.
True.
So just manage your expectations. That's the best thing I could say. So, look, I've never had a problem with it, but I have heard people complain about the food standard here. But personally,
Okay.
I've not had trouble with it.
It's interesting that you say this though, because I always, as a teacher, get questions about Australian food. My husband's Indian. He asks me about Australian food, like what's a typical Australian dish. I'm like, Australia's such a multicultural country. It's hard to sort of think about what is an Australian dish. I think maybe chicken palmy or chicken snitty or something.
Yeah,
When I was growing up, there was this concept, and I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's meat and free veg.
yes.
That's
Yeah,
when
that's
I think of
more
Australian food, I think of this.
Yeah, I think it's more of an English thing, right? That's certainly adopted from an English standard. Yeah, when you were asking me about it, I was thinking more about casual side of things. So Australians are very casual in how they eat. If they stop off at a corner shop, I'll get the petrol on pump two and or some of those dim sims. So there's always a casual nature to it.
Sausage roll, meat pie.
Yeah, look, I work in a blue collar area, so people will stop and just eat on the go out of a bag, whatever it is. So dim sims, meat
Yeah.
pie. So it is more casual. Perhaps in other parts of the country it's less casual, but certainly here people are more fiendish. They prefer. You can't even call it a dish because it's served generally in a bag.
Yeah. I grew up in a small beach town, so it was the
Yeah.
same for me growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're at the beach here, so a lot of fish and chips. Again, it's
Yeah.
it's an,
Just don't do the peas. You guys do
No.
peas, don't you?
no, I can't do it.
But that's a thing in England, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah, it's sacrilege for me to say that I don't do it, but I don't do it. I just can't.
yeah.
Sometimes it reminds me. Look, what I'd say about the English food is sometimes that we need to remember that the Germans are not flying overhead anymore.
Yeah. You can have a bit of variety. Put the cabbage away.
It doesn't have to be spam. So that's the best way I can put it is we can knock the Australians for being casual all we want, but likewise the English aren't any better with the concept that the Blitz is not happening anymore. Stop it. It's over.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that's so true too, though. Yeah, we are pretty casual in that sense. I grew up in a small town. I've moved around. I've lived in Ayers Rock Resort, I should say. I've lived there. I've lived in Darwin. Then I moved to Brisbane. Darwin, basically a small town.
Am I right in thinking that Darwin has a thing for chili? Is it chili? There's a particular foreign dish that Darwin has adopted as its own.
Oh,
Is it chili?
they have the Mindel market, and really popular at the markets is the papaya salad that are really
No,
spicy. But
I
I don't
don't
know
think
about
that.
the chili.
There's something about a spicy dish that Darwin is more known for.
Oh,
Maybe somebody watching this
maybe.
will eventually point it out. But
Yeah, maybe someone can comment. I know that definitely famous for mango because in the
Yep.
wet season, when the mangoes are, the picking season, people tend to go a little bit crazy during monsoon season. Heat builds up, and they
I've heard-
call that mango madness.
Okay, I like it. We don't have anything like that here. Perhaps March Madness here in Adelaide. All of the festivals occur
Okay.
at once in Adelaide around February and March, and the result is that you have festivals on top of each other, basically layered on the same
Yeah.
oval in the same part of the city at once. So you end
Oh
up with this
wow!
culinary overdose, for want of a better word.
Yeah,
So there's no one particular food; it's just everything at once happening in Adelaide
wow.
all at the same time, and they call it March
Yeah.
Madness.
So if anyone wants to go to Adelaide, it's that time of year.
Yeah, February and March, it's all on. I can't even list them all. I think there's a wine festival. There's the Adelaide Fringe. I couldn't even list them all. It happens simultaneously, and as one ends, another takes its place. So it's just
Yeah, wow.
very
Just
compact.
one after the other.
Yeah. I know the Greek festival just happened here where I live, literally 10 minutes down the road. That happened about a week ago.
Yeah.
And it's localized, so you can go from one suburb to another and it's still going on.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Darwin's very famous for their Greek festival too, actually, June long weekend.
Okay. There's a lot of Greeks here, and they were out in their numbers at the one locally here. So I think there was a bigger one even in Adelaide. Don't quote me on that.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I love Greek food. Yum.
Yeah, I went specifically to grab 2 or 3 different plates, and then I must admit, I didn't stay around for long enough. I had a few things here, and I can't even pronounce the names of the things I had. So
Yeah. Gotta love the variety though. All right, work culture. Obviously, you didn't work when you were in London, but you've been back a few times. I'm sure your parents probably have talked about any differences in work culture. Yeah, tell me about that.
Look, what I'd say is, again, a bit like the food, is it's more casual here in Adelaide than it is in the UK. Although with one or two, look, the culture has changed since we arrived. My dad actually got a formal written warning for referring to a public holiday as a bank holiday. He typed out an email and somebody came over to him and gave him some trouble for it. And this guy gave him a formal written. So
Crazy. Okay.
at the time, and there is still not to much of an extent, but there was at the time anti-English sentiment here, and basically it said, "Sharpie Pom, get it right this time." He didn't stand up
Wow.
for long after that. He knew that the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
There, but yeah, it's
That's unfortunate. That's quite disappointing to hear, actually.
They were strict at that point on that sort of thing, which is just ridiculous. But that goes to
Yeah.
show things must have been going pretty smooth if that was the biggest problem of the day.
Yeah.
Look,
Slow news
now
days.
I'm working. I would say whenever I witness anything from overseas, it appears that we're much more casual here than these. My employer frequently swears. The swearing culture is something that you will have to get used to if you do come to Australia. You're already aware, but the swearing culture is something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the casual nature of it all. I just say it's generally more relaxed. It's expected that you will chuck a sickie. It's expected that it will happen.
Yeah.
They maybe don't be so forthright about it, but it's expected that it will happen from time to time. Certainly in America, for example, where it's frowned upon.
And I guess the difference between the two countries is that in Australia, you actually get like decent sick leave entitlements for the most part.
Yeah.
You've got to use them up.
I'm not sure what my entitlement is, but it's nothing to sneeze at. It's pretty good. So one thing I was going to say is my dad in the UK was constantly going through periods of boom and bust with his work, where he had lots of work, so much work that he couldn't possibly keep up, followed by complete bust. It was seemingly a loop cycle of boom and bust with a sort of recession in between. Here in Australia, I would say that it's much more stable. It's much less fragmented. There's less of that. Once you're fully employed somewhere, you can, with some exceptions, expect to remain full-time employment. So that is obviously a positive. There's less requirement to work unpaid overtime here in Adelaide.
Yeah.
As far as I know. So you work your contracted hours and that's it. And anything over that is unusual. Certainly, I've never worked for anyone that's demanded extra on top. If it has happened, I've been asked, "Hey, look, we're a bit under the pump. Do you mind? We're in the shit. Whatever terminology it is. Do you mind putting in 2 or 3 hours today and maybe a bit more tomorrow?" So it's usually posed as a question rather than an expectation and a demand.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point because most of my students are from Asian countries and South America, where there is those expectations that you will just do overtime, you'll work on weekends, and you don't get paid extra for it. I used to work management in hotels, and in my contract, it said I would be expected to do a reasonable amount of overtime because I was a manager. So that could be 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it was. But when I was just a regular, like full-time frontline employee, I would get paid for it. So the last job I worked for before I moved to India was workers' compensation. I worked for Work Cover in Queensland.
Okay.
And we could choose to work extra hours and it would go into like our banked hours. So then, if you did an extra 30 minutes a day, once it reached 8 hours, you could take an extra day off and it was paid for. And when I was back home in September, I went and visited my old colleague. And they've now changed it because they have so many claims now that they're letting people work on weekends after hours and they can choose, do you want to get paid like double time for it or accrue banked hours?
Right.
So that is like to have these kinds of extra hours. It is common in the sense that if you do have to work overtime, you're compensated for it. Whereas in other countries, you're not.
So I would say it's fairer here. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
The ball appears to be more in the workers' court. I'm sure there are people that would deny that as well.
Yeah.
Opinions are like arseholes. I haven't worked anywhere else, but from what I've seen, we appear to be on the right track.
Yeah. Look, I have worked in a lot of different industries in Australia, and hospitality, it can get really shit working in the hospitality industry. There's a lot of overtime. Sometimes you don't get paid for it. Sometimes you do. But when I hear stories from people from other countries and compare, I definitely still feel like even with that overtime work, Australia, like you said, is still a little bit fairer.
You know what? Look, in my 30 years on this planet, I have not heard a hospitality worker say that they like hospitality. So
Yeah, true.
it might just
Yeah.
be a universal truth that it sucks and you just got to put up with it. I don't know. I've not worked in hospitality, so I can't.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. Like, I worked in hospitality in Darwin. It was honestly the funnest 2 years of my life because, like, it was just so chill. I would go drinking after work because we like worked right in front of the main street. So it was very easy just to go out after work. Hospitality nights were a thing. So people would go drinking on like a Monday night. They had hospo night.
I know that's definitely a thing here in Adelaide. The hospitality crew, as they're called, do go out, and from what I understand, is they get pretty rowdy.
Yeah.
They definitely are a bit of a family here. I know that much.
Yeah.
I think like the emergency services do a similar thing.
Yeah.
Thursday nights, you might find more of them out on the town than regular nights.
Exactly. All right. So even though both places speak English, have you found any language or communication differences between Australia and the UK?
Obviously, the accents is one thing. The complete lack of distinction between football and soccer and football.
Yeah.
Look, that argument will never end. The only thing I was going to say is, and it's something that doesn't really come up on the radar much, is that somewhere north of Adelaide here, some of the suburbs here have a very close accent to southeastern England. It's much closer than mine. It's the dropping of TH for F. They will say think instead of think.
Oh, what accent is that in English? I only know a few accents. I don't want to just guess the wrong one.
It comes closer to Cockney, but not
I was
quite.
going to say that. Is it close to Cockney? Yeah.
Yeah. So they're very, very London sounding in the northern suburbs of Adelaide specifically.
Heard this.
It's like a macro accent, and I am yet to see much of it ever spoken about, but it's a real thing. If you ask anyone from Adelaide, they know it exists. So that would be like Elizabeth, Salisbury, Manapara sort of way. Those three suburbs have an unusual accent. It's a very bizarre accent that they've developed.
Yeah.
Perhaps jarring to anyone from the UK to find somebody that speaks like that.
Yeah.
Other language barriers, I don't know. The only ones that I can think about is that each state has various ways of defining certain products. So beer is one,
Yeah.
or bologna is one, or ham.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay.
I've forgotten all of the different ways that you can ask for a cut of ham.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the most part, it wasn't a problem. It was perhaps a cultural understanding that we didn't have of each other when we first arrived. So obviously now, 25 years later, it's not a problem. But for the first probably 5 years or so, there was a serious cultural problem that we had to deal with.
Do you think your parents have gotten a lot more relaxed now? Like being in Australia, have they adjusted to the relaxed, laid back kind of culture?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, one thing I was going to say is that there's a rat race in England. It's important that you dress correctly, that you drive the right car, that you live in the right postcode, and that still exists here in Adelaide. Not so much in Adelaide, but in Australia it does exist. Nowhere near. Look, not in the same league. If I went back to the UK and dressed like I do here, I would probably be shot. No designer here at all. No Mercedes Benz. Like I drive a Ute. I can't imagine around in a Ute in the UK would be acceptable. Yeah, look, I just don't. It's just not something that we have here. People generally don't care what car you drive. They don't care what clothes you wear. Something I've heard about is sneakerheads in the US and the UK, where they're looking at your shoes.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter here. Nobody cares what fucking shoes you wear. They really don't care.
No,
as
that's
long as you
true.
wear them, sometimes that's optional.
Well, yeah, that's true because again, back in Darwin, there is a whole different world there. But on Sundays to Thursday night, you could go to the club or the pub because the pub turns into a club wearing thongs. There was no dress code except for Friday and Saturday nights. Then you had to wear shoes, but thongs were accepted every other night of the week.
My local pub here is right on the beach, so I'll often go down for a swim and then go into the pub, and they've never once told me to get out for not wearing shoes because I never wear the shoes.
Yeah.
Because they're smack bang on the beach, I feel like it's acceptable. Whereas if they were like 500 meters down, a bit shadier. But yeah, for the most part, it's much more casual. When I went back to the UK last, I remember people like sneering at me for I wasn't wearing the right gear in the right place, the right time.
Yeah, okay.
And I wouldn't even know what they'd want me to be wearing instead. My old man explained to me was that you used to be able to spot where somebody was from by their shoes.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
where you'd be able to spot, specifically at football matches, you could tell that somebody was from a rival club because of their shoes, which to me is just
Wow.
it's just
That's
insane.
crazy.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Without opening their mouth or anything else, you could tell somebody's geographic
Yeah.
location by their shoes.
Someone once asked me this on Instagram, actually, like on my other Instagram account. Am I able to spot Australians if I see, let's say, another foreigner in India, or if I see people at the airport? Can I spot Australians? And at first I was kind of like, I don't think I can. And then I was like, yeah, they're the ones wearing the thongs at the airport, or wearing like thongs with socks in winter at the airport.
I've got a story for you. We were at a music festival in far eastern Victoria in the Gippsland, and we pulled up and we got out of the car, and I saw a dude about 100 meters away, and I spied him and I went, that's a Queenslander. That guy is from Queensland. I know that guy is from Queensland. And he actually came up to us because he saw me pointing at him. Standard Australian talk. G'day, Cobb, how you going? I said, mate, before you get started here, you're not from Queensland, are you? He went, how'd you know? And he was like, what? Yeah, what about it? I was like, well, I just knew. Stubby shorts. He was wearing wearing maroon. It wasn't a Maroons jersey. He was shoeless. It was raining, but he was shoeless in stubbies. I just knew he was Queenslander, and he was carrying a Bundaberg rum as well, and like dead giveaway.
Oh, like tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he was like, how'd you know? How'd you know? Like, I spotted you, dude. I just knew.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But I can't do it for any other state but Queensland. Queensland stands out so bad for that sort of thing. So, the same thing happened in Bali. We were in the airport in Bali, and I spotted a group of blokes, and I said to the guys, they're from Queensland, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Stubbies is the dead giveaway for Queensland. I don't know why.
You know what's funny though, what you were saying before about how different states have different words for things. This is not something I really knew. Like, I grew up in New South Wales. I lived in Queensland for 6 years, but I didn't really notice these kind of differences because New South Wales and Queensland, where I'm from in New South Wales, is very close to the Queensland border.
Yeah.
So I didn't really notice these differences. But my sister, she lives in Perth. Her partner is from WA. And they have this kind of constant argument in their house about what we call a face washer, which is like a very small towel that you wash your face with, and they call a flannel.
Yeah, we call it a flannel.
Yeah. So they've got two girls, and like my sister's partner will like tell my niece, go and grab a flannel from the cupboard or get flannel to wash your face. And my sister's like, it's a face washer.
The Americans call it a washcloth.
Yes.
Which for some reason it sounds more vulgar than flannel.
It does, yeah. But when I hear flannel, I think of like the flannel shirt, flannelette pajamas, that kind of thing, not a towel.
Yes, and the two can be confused, I suppose. We call the flannelette shirt here is called the flanny. So you. Yeah,
true, flanny. Yeah, well, we call it flano. Now that I think about it, do you say Palmer or Palmy?
Palmy.
Yeah, we say Palmy too.
South Australians have a particular affinity for the Parmigiana and the Schnitzel because of the high German population here.
Yeah, I've heard there's a huge German population there. Yeah, there's like a mini Germantown or something, isn't there?
Yeah, Harndorf, and it's fucking top. I recommend going.
Yeah.
The leather shop in Harndorf is exceptional. If anyone's in Adelaide, go to the leather shop. It's really good.
Okay.
They have a statue of Ned Kelly out front from memory.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. It might be a straw man, but yeah. Other than that, the German influence here, I can't think of much more, but I've bought 2 houses now since I've been in Adelaide, and both of them I bought off of Germans. So, yeah, they're certainly
really?
Not intentionally. It just so happened both were German.
Last question to wrap things up. Any advice for people wanting to travel to Australia or move to Australia?
Yes, I think that this isn't mentioned enough. I don't know whether or not it is, but look, my strongest piece of advice for anyone coming over here is expect to take a few steps backwards in progress immediately.
Okay.
You will not have the lifestyle that you expect instantaneously. You must take 2 or 3 steps backwards, and you will make a leap. Eventually, it will take 12 months. It will take 18 months.
Yeah.
Depending on your chosen profession, but you will have to take 2 or 3 steps backwards to begin with.
That's great advice.
Yes. So my family definitely did. We definitely took a step back, but you'll find that you'll get ahead. It's a bit like a slingshot. You'll pull backwards to go forwards. You will
Yeah.
move forwards. It may take you 12, 18 months, maybe 2 years, maybe longer. I don't know these days, but
Yeah.
you have to be comfortable with the fact that you're not going to get the dream life immediately. You might not
Yeah.
have the penthouse apartment that you're expecting.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. You have to just be comfortable in the fact that, like, and it's not going to suck. You're not going to have a shit time. It's not going to be, it's not going to just land in your lap, unfortunately.
Yeah. Lower the expectations.
Australia promises a lot, but you'll find that your qualifications, if they are accepted here, are maybe not so desirable compared to somebody that's already worked here.
True. Yeah.
You have to be comfortable with the fact that you are going to have to take a few steps backwards. The only real thing that I can say is my best advice that I can give anyone that's coming over here is expect to deprogress before you progress.
Yeah. That's actually really, really great advice. I think in any situation when you're moving to a different country, I wouldn't say starting from nothing, but you are starting from very, very bottom.
You have to prove yourself. You know, look, additionally, there are probably language and cultural barriers that need to be broken first. You need to be able to understand what's expected here, for example. Yeah, look, it's a different place. It's an alien place. There is nowhere else quite like it, I
Yeah.
don't think. The closest is probably the UK, and look, you know, even we struggled. And any
Yeah.
other Englishman that you ask will have the same sort of things. Oh, yeah, it wasn't that easy. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the best advice I can give: is expect to go backwards.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, to go forwards, and it will be rewarding so long as you
Mm.
put in the work.
That's great. Thank you so much. And well, yeah, thank you so much for joining me today, Tom. This has been really great. It's been nice getting to hear someone else's opinion, especially like I said before, like the UK, Australia are very, very kind of similar in some cases with language. Australia, you know, there used to be a British colony, so there's that very big British influence. But it's been interesting to hear that, yeah, there been those kind of struggles too for you and your family as well. I think a lot of people will relate to that.
Well, look, I hope that this at least helps somebody on their journey here.
I think it will. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.